Hello. Before the start, you already know. I'm sorry. So, today is Sasa's birthday. Yes. Oh. So, before his talk, I want to ask you a favor. We all need to sing happy birthday to him. Okay? Yeah? Are you going to do... Say, what? No, in English.
I don't mind.
In English. So, are you ready? Yeah? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Sasha. Happy birthday to you.
I thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. And now you can start.
I'll do my very best. So, welcome everybody to my talk about GroovyFX. Anyone here who already heard about GroovyFX? Oh, 2 out of whatever. Great. Anyone of them used GroovyFX? Good. So, maybe after this talk you want to try out, because I like it very much. But do you know what JavaFX is? Anyone? Okay. GroovyFX is a GroovyFX is a DSL on top of JavaFX, a Groovy DSL. So, but first of all, some words about me. My name is officially Alexander Klein. Everyone is calling me Sasha. Sasha is the Russian nickname of Alexander. So, feel free to call me Sasha. I'm branch manager in Stuttgart of CodeCentric, and I'm working there for almost 3 years now. But I'm in Java virtual machine-based development for almost 18 years now. And yeah, I'm very much into Groovy stuff. I'm doing Groovy project for more than 8 years now, and I managed to put Groovy into almost any project right now, so I'm really admitted. Good. So, let the last ones come in. What is GroovyFX? GroovyFX, first of all, is just a library, and a library for JavaFX for using it much easier when you're coming from the Groovy side. So a DSL. And it's using the Groovy builder pattern. Maybe you already use it with a markup builder or JSON builder or any other builders in the Groovy area. The Swing build, for Swing you as well have the Swing builder, and there as well a builder, it's called the scene graph builder, that is for JavaFX. JavaFX, when Oracle decided to release the new version of JavaFX, they said, okay, we want to make it a plain Java API. And I would say this had been a good decision after some kind of confusion with the JavaFX script for the older version of JavaFX. But this opened again, I'm sorry, this opened again ways for other languages like Groovy to simplify JavaFX in a way how we are used to it. So, the DSL of GroovyFX is a declarative way of describing, very much like JavaFX script from the idea. And it's much simpler to write than writing JavaFX directly. It's much more easier to read, especially if you have hierarchies and layouting, stuff like that. And from my point of view, it's as well much more natural. You can find GroovyFX on groovyfx.org. You get a lot of documentation and the code and binaries. If anyone wants to join in to increase the documentation, feel free. There's always need there. Or for contributions as well. So this is the GitHub project. And because of the documentation on the new side isn't so rich, I would say. We had much more documentation on the old code house. I found a copy, a mirror of the old Codehouse page. And not only for this stuff, as well for other stuff that is vanished by moving away from the Codehouse, there you could find all the old documentation. It's very helpful. So a small example. I hope it's a little bit readable from up there. Just to show how this could look like. I don't want to go big in details. We can do that later on. But you will see all starts with the GroovyFX.start. And in there we define a stage. A stage is, I would say, a kind of runtime environment in the scene graph builder in JavaFX. Or you have the possibility to have multiple stages in parallel, and you can switch stages, as well as the scenes. That is like a page on a browser, I would say, but you as well could have multiples preloaded and initialized and just switch, but a scene as well is kind of a window. So if you have multiple windows on your screen, you have multiple scenes. So this is the default structure, and in there you have a hierarchical definition of, here you have a border pane. This is maybe, if you know from Swing, there's a border layout in the past. The same thing in JavaFX with panes. There you have a location top, or in there is going on the top area, or the other stuff that's outside, or if there's nothing like top, left, right button, then it's in the center, and so on. And you have all the elements like text and any stuff like that in this hierarchical definition. So just a little demo how this could look like. So I hope, yes. This is the result of what we just saw, including animations, stuff like that. You can click to start the animation again. So this is not much effort, but it looks really nice in the end. So, but how we come to that, we'll see later on in more details. So let's go to a more simple example. So as I said, we have the start. Here I just use it with a static import. It's the same technique. And then I have the stage in there. Here I can define things like the title. This is then as well the window title. I can define if it should be visible in the beginning or not. This way you could define multiple and just make them visible if you need them later on. And one scene in there. One scene in there where I just defined that I want to use some style sheets. JavaFX has the possibility that you style your desktop application code or views like web pages using CSS. It is not always the same semantics for the CSS names. Because of that, they decided to prefix everything with -fx minus and then margin or whatever. And it's as well only a subset because, for example, all the layouting like float and stuff like that is as well not meant to be used. It's not meant to be used in JavaFX. So, is it from me? Maybe to the front?
Yes. Yeah. The antenna.
Yeah, okay.
Check it.
Great. Some freedom to move. Good. Okay, recap. So, as I said, you can style your views with CSS, and the only thing you have to do is just to say, okay, my style sheet that should be used in here with the style sheet command. As you can see, this very much looks like closures and method calls. And yes, these are methods and closures. So here you just have a, let's go to the next. The general contract, this is for all builders. The general contract is that you have a container name, for example here, the scene. And you have the possibility to add some attributes. These are optional. If this is optional, as you know from methods, you don't need the brackets, at least if you have some curly brackets there, that we mostly have. But if you have something, you have to add the brackets, then you can add some attributes. If not, you can leave off the brackets. So, and in there, you might have another subcontainer, whatever, until you have a leaf, like here, the label, and there is the same technique. And in there, you have an optional value where you a single value without a like that, without a named argument. So you can just say, for example, here, style sheets, here is a string, this is the value. And the contract says that there may only be one of them, and all the other arguments have to be named, like title and whatever. And what this default or these value, these not named things doing, this is depending on where you are. For style sheet, it's just setting the style sheet. For a button, it's the text for the button, and so on. So this is kind of definition of each node. Yeah, that is all of that. The only thing is that if you have something hierarchical inside, like here you have a container and something inside, you just put it into curly brackets, it's a closure. So everything in this closure is one level deeper. So and if you understand this thing, most of this concept, most of the code would be very helpful. So would be very readable, I would say. So what is the result of this very simple demo? Yes. We have the window with the title Hello Groovy. We have a Hello GroovyFX label. If you want to, I can show the code again. Maybe I can. No, it doesn't work. Okay. So we have this title. There you see the title. There you see a label with the text here. And the styling is here. I said, okay, the style class. In my style sheet, I defined, okay, there is a CSS class called big, and the big means take this font size, for example. So here, because of that, this font is as big, as shown here. So this is a very simple example. If it gets a bit more complex, like forms and components and stuff like that, let's have a look to a simple form. Let's have a look how it looks like. This is what we want to have. We want to say, hello, Greach. If you press return, you have the result entered here in a label down below. So this is what we want to have. So this is the code for it. Okay, we again have our stage and our scene. This is the same that we had. Style sheet as well. And in there we have a VBox. A VBox is a vertical layouting box. So VBox is like a layout manager in Swing. It just takes all the elements that are the content and puts them in vertical one below the other. So what are we taking here? We have a label, and the text of the label is name. Then we have a text field to enter something. And then what happens if the action occurs? The action is for a button, it is the click. For a return, it is pressing enter or something like that. And with Groovy, we have it very easy. We just need to add a closure. If we need it, we get an event. And I just say, OK, the result.text, so the text of the result, should be the text of the source of this event. So the source is the text field. But where's the result? So the thing is, if we have a look to the next label, we have this ID. ID is general for all nodes you can have. If you give it an ID attribute, it will automatically create a variable in the binding of the whole script in here. So in the binding, as soon as it had been passed, and it's like a variable that you can magically use. You could have the same result with saying result equals label and so on, but this is, well, very helpful and easy to find. This is the normal way to do. So If we go to the next, here in this code, I actively set the text of the result when I hit return. But I think it would be nice that I don't need to do it actively. It should be done passively. And what JavaFX as well introduced or has by itself is a binding framework, a binding pattern. So this means if I just have a look to the next example, and this should look like that. So I enter something, hello Greach, and as soon as I type anything, I will get this stuff. And as well, I see I have some kind of modification, so I just have a prefix text, for example. So how can we achieve that? It's not so hard to do, because here is all the same that we had. We have the label as well. So here we have our text field. Now it's just a plain text field. I as well could have done ID : text field instead of doing the text field here. It's just one way you could do. So here for the first label, I say, okay, the text of my label, I want to bind it. There we have the key name of binding, or the method binding, to the text field's text property. Yeah? And the thing is, in the ending property is some kind of convention in JavaFX. So all the properties by default in JavaFX have to be named property as a method. But GroovyFX helps us a little bit in being more lazy. So it as well adds a dynamic method text as a method. That is just where you can bind against, and this is the same thing than text property. And it as well helps us in just that you can just bind to the get method. This is making a automatically binding, but it's unidirectional. In the other ways, it could be bidirectional as well. And another way to say is if I have the property as a string, I can as well say okay on the text field and then give the string. If I want to have these modifications, like this prefixed text, here, I always, for all the ways, up there I can just append a .using and add a converter. I just add a closure where I just say, okay, my result should be what I get in there, prepend the text, and that's it. That's very easy and much more easy than doing it in JavaFX, where you have to do a lot of code. Yeah, here we have the last label, where something is bound, and this is just to show you, you don't have to do the binding here while creating the elements. You can as well do that offsite, where you just have the bind, and you can as well call that as a normal method call. You can bind the last label .text to the text field .text, and then I have automatically connected all the stuff. Here as well you can add using and so on. So this is really great. But up till now, here we just bound two components to each other. But how do we bind things to our own model? So if we have a look to what our model needs is that we have these properties, these binding properties that all the components have automatically in JavaFX. But if I do it for myself, I have to take care. And luckily, GroovyFX helps us out with the FX Bindable Annotation as an AST transformation that does all the job for us. It does the, in this case, the name method and the name property method and doing all the stuff in there. For all, I would say, most of the cases, you don't have to do anything more. So what I do here is just creating a small class where I can set a name and a birth date. Okay, and then I just show here Let's do it this way. Maybe it's easier. I just create my new person with my name, with my birth, my local date, and have the same stuff than before. And here in my binding, now I bind to my person object that I just instantiated here. There to the property name, I as well could have used all the other syntax that I just showed. And here the same, I use the date picker. It's another element that I can use, and I bind the birth date of the person. So, and then here as well I do the same binding, and the interesting thing is that here I bind to closure, right? Just mark the curly brackets. And the interesting thing is that now this is listening to changes to all the properties in this closure. So there could be 50 properties in there, and it is listening if any of these are changed, and then it's recalculating the value and setting the new value for the binding. This is something that is really hard to do natively in JavaFX by code. This is not a one-liner like we have here. So this is very, very powerful and helpful. Yeah, just for showing that I'm not lying. This is the result, where I just say okay and get whatever, right? So now we had some kind of binding and all this stuff, but if you want to have more fancy forms and views, you want to have some kind of layouting. So just going over some fast examples. Overall, here we have the border layout, border pane, that is the border layout in Swing. And here we just have kind of containers, sub-containers for the location where to put the stuff, on the top, on the center, bottom and right. You see, the center is commented out because if you have anything on the top level, it automatically lands in the center. Is it me again? I'm sorry. The micro dance. Okay, so all the other stuff is nothing new. The only thing to show is, for example, image view is how to embed an image in there. Here I have a bottom. Bottom. I thought it's a button. No, just a label and a text field and so on. So this is the very easiest layouting, but nonetheless used very often, where you just can show all this stuff. Right? So another layout manager is the grid layout manager. That is a bit more complex because it has a bit more options. Because the thing is, you have to and want to design some columns, and here you have the column constraints part in there, where you can just say, okay, it has minimal width and horizontal alignment and how it grows and so on. That you just put directly into the grid pane, and then you just put your elements like the labels and text fields and whatever you want to put there. But on each element you can say on which row and on which column it should be placed. That is much more easier to use than the way JavaFX is doing that, because there you have to tell the grid pane where the component lies, and here you define the position on the component where it lies inside of the grid. So for many people it's much more easy to understand this way. So for example, right? One thing that I want to show is what I added in here as well. If I have a hover over the label and I shortly show you code, I as well can do things like displaying in the grid pane, displaying some lines. It's easier for debugging or for designing your code if it doesn't look like you expected it. This you can just do by here in the label. Here I add events to the label, and all the events start with on. In this case, on mouse entered and mouse exit. Then I say, okay, if this event happens, then please set the grid line visible true and then to false. So and this is the whole thing that in JavaFX, in general, you have a single listener. So in Swing, you're used to that you can register multiple listeners to the same event. In Swing, normally, in JavaFX, you normally have a single one that might call multiple logics and multiple sub-listeners, but there you have to care for yourself. Something you have to have in mind. Because of that, you as well can say, yeah, my label dot on mouse listener mouse entered equals that, and this is going nuts again. I think, I'm not absolutely sure, but I think this is as well something that you, in this way, you can add multiple ones that will create a wrapper run. I have to look in the code, but I thought something had been there. Otherwise, I did it for my project. It's not easy to do, not difficult to do, but I think it's already in GroovyFX in there. If not, would be a good pull request. So, having looked to lists, for example, just show you what I mean. So, if I just have a list and I have a drop down and I have what is selected showing down there, and if I select here, the selection changes there. If I select there, it changes. Selection changes there as well. So, what can I do? How can I do that? Here we have our choice box. This is the drop down, and all is lists and drop downs and so on work with just normal lists. So. And if a JavaFX-based lists are or observable lists, what you normally use in JavaFX, if you use normal lists, these will be automatically converted into observable lists. But you as well can use the official observable lists there. So here I take a normal list with some texts and put it into here as items. So. Then I just have my data in there. And then I bind the value of the choice box to a selection holder selected. So what I did is just create somewhere where I can bind to. So a class and a simple instance with a selected property. So I just bind the value that is selected here to the selection holder selected. So as soon as the choice box changes, the value in here will change as well automatically, and the other way around as well. So if this changes, automatically the choice box will select the new element. With the list, it's not as easy but not so complicated. I as well add the items for the values. Here I just give it a name. And if I have unselected, so in the selection event, I can say, okay, then set the selection holder to my item that had been selected. And for the way around, I have to do it manual as well. Here I have to say, okay, if my selected changed, so maybe I changed here, then please, in the selection model, select, please, the new value. And here I just bind to my selection holder to show the values. Working with colors is as well sometimes easier. I have some kind of color constants, like blue, for example. But I as well have, I can define in an HSB or in RGB, or as well with alpha channel. And it's not so nice, but if you call a string on the builder, so here the builder is the delegate, then you as well can use the HTML version or CSS version for defining colors. These are color objects altogether. So what I want to show here, I'll show you the result very quick. So I want to show a table where the first column showing the colors itself as colored rectangles, and then some values like the hue, brightness, and saturation, opacity, and the web code of it. So to show that, I just define a table view in their table columns. And then I have to, let's start with the simple ones. For saturation, hue, and brightness, I can easily say, okay, in my column, use the property saturation of the value of this row. So here as well in the tables, you see it here, we as well have a list of colors. And these colors are the items or the data model, so to say, here, the items of the table view. So, and here I just say, okay, the property saturation, so it's calling the get saturation method on the color object. This should be mapped to a column, and the title is saturation with this preferred width. The same with hue and brightness. If I want to have a converter, like changing for the opacity, because I get the opacity as a value from 0 to 1, and I want to have it in a percentage value, I can just say, okay, add a converter in here, in the column, and this is the value I get, and here I can just say, okay, make a percentage value from it. Another way to say to do is for the opacity, for the web code. Here I just say we want to send back a string in a format where we just take the RGB values, convert that into integers, and format that. But then I can use the cell value factory as well. But there I have to return a object wrapper normally a read-only object wrapper, so I just have to wrap that with that. And if it's more complex or other way around, I as well can register a cell factory, where I can say, okay, I have this object wrapper is just getting the value, but I want to change or define how the value is created, and the value in this case that should be shown is a rectangle. So here I say my factory for to show is giving me a rectangle 40 to 20, and I create a table cell that if the update item is called inside of the table logic, then please fill the rectangle with the color that I should show and set it as a graphics. So this way you can see that in tables you can put anything in there, any element, and use it even as an element interactive as part as the table cells. This way you have to do it this way. It's not so intuitive, but it works. So one thing JavaFX itself doesn't have, but GroovyFX brings it along, is a kind of action holder action. Maybe you know from Spring, you might know the actions like an abstraction for buttons and menus and stuff like that. GroovyFX brings that with it. where you can just define these with fx actions, put into a actions area or block, where I can just define, okay, then I have the save action, there has a name, the description, the accelerator as a string, and if it's enabled by default, any actions that should occur. For example, for the exit button, close my primary stage, so my main window. If you close the primary stage and it's the last open stage, JavaFX application automatically closes, so this as well is a closing. You as well can do things for like a selected if it might be used in, for example, in a checkable menu item or something like that. So you have some options to use there. And how to use it is very simple. If I just put it into for a menu bar, I can say, okay, I have a menu and the menu item in there. This is the default way without actions. I would have to say on action, then do something. And in there as well, I could place the rectangle that should be shown as image or like that. But I as well can use save action in here for the menu item, and I have all the other things defined in a different place, and I don't have to think about anymore. Separator menus, the other actions. Another way down here is, for example, if I have a check menu item, then it's automatically using the selected or not, and then it's default selected, or the others not. I as well have radio menu items, and so on. And I can use the same thing again in any checkboxes. Here, for example, or for checkboxes, something I forgot to mention. Save as, where it is? Here. The save as, I have these enabled to false. So by default it is false. And I say, okay, I want this to be bound to a property or a checkbox in this case. So I say, okay, here we have a checkbox, and I bind. And if I want to bind the selection state of this, I need to bind it. I want to bind that to the checkbox value to my save action. The problem is, normally I would just say, okay, bind save action something, but save action is an action and not a component. So, but what I can do is I can use the bean node and say, okay, this is the bean where I want to do anything with, the save action in this case, and then please bind the enabled property to the selected property. So this is a way around that if we don't have it prepared for binding and stuff like that. And as well, if I just want to use it in buttons, I as well can do it manually, or I can just say button with a copy action, and that's it. So the result of that like that. Here I have the menus. Save is disabled. If I click that, save is enabled. Here I have checkable options. Here I have radio options, submenus, and so on. And here I have the toolbar. Good. I think we don't have so much time left. 7 minutes. Okay, so I'll hurry up a bit. Just showing, just as a showcase, I'll show you the demo. What as well is usable, is very easy to do are some chartings like that, using the JavaFX chartings. Just as a sample, where I can add slices and stuff like that. And the code for that, just as a showcase, is 2 pages in this case. So it's not so hard. You can have a look to the slides later on if you're interested. I want to go a little bit into animations. The thing is, you might have the situation that you have complex paths, maybe from a CVG or something that you want to show, but you don't want to just import the image, but you want the path shown. So you can very easily do that by, as a result, it looks like that. It's very easily because we have these path node, where we have a lot of options, and in the beginning it looks it is sometimes very complex. I just, move to this position, then make a cubic curve to this with this called control points and so on. For someone who's not so much into the basics of graphics, this is hard, but if you have if you have a SVG file, you can open that with Inkscape, and Inkscape has an exporter to the old JavaFX 2 script, the old JavaFX script. And if you export it this way, then it looks like that. This is the path we just show, where we just see, this is the stroke line, and then move to this XY cubic curve to control points and so on. So this is exactly the same thing, it's just you have to rearrange it, but you have all the precisions and all the stuff, so this is not so difficult just to take the information from there to create that. It's a bit, but the result is what you just saw. And this is as well, it's scaling dynamically. No, not in this case, but it can be. I didn't bound it to the size, but this is the advantage of vector graphics. Another thing to show is that you as well easily can do shapes and do transitions and effects on that, and movements, a little bit of animation. For example, here I have normal shapes like default shapes like rectangles and circles, but as well you can define an SVG path. Here you can just take out this path, it's like it is, copy it from an SVG file. I think I have one here. Here. This is exactly this path that you have here in the D. Just copy over in there, and you can use that. You can even use that in your CSS files. You can use that as shapes of buttons. You can use that for anything. And this is really a great feature of JavaFX, and much more easier using GroovyFX here. And you as well can add translations, so animation stuff. Where is it here? Like for example, here I have this polygon, so this triangle. Triangle is no default stuff, so I have to do it as a polygon or as a path. But I as well can add events like on mouse pressed, where I just start a rotation, and I just add a rotate translation, where I just say, at the second, I want to, as a rotate, that you are at the second are at the position minus 360 degrees. So this is the direction and one full turn. And it should be linear, so always the same time in between. And it should cycle indefinitely. As long as the animation is running, it should do that. For the other thing, the other animation, this is a parallel transition, so it's a mixture of two animations. One is a translate, so a moving, and the other is a scaling, so getting bigger. Here as well, I say on second 3, please, it should be to the position 100, an X position, or for scaling, it should be the second double size. And but in between, the interpolation in between is done that it is starting slowly, then faster, and then getting slowly more to the end. So it's a more smooth move. And you as well can add events what should happen when it's finished. So a lot of features that we get from JavaFX that are much more easy to implement and use in GroovyFX. And just some nice showcases. What you can do with that is as well animate backgrounds. if you ever want to do something like that. I don't know if, yeah, you see it with the beamer, where I have this gradient walking around. And this is something as well interesting. Normally, you might have the situation that you have own components, or components from a library, and you want to use that. So you have two possibilities. The first one is you just use them and embed them here. If it's a leaf, so it cannot contain any other element, you just take the node and you give an instance, so node with the default value as an instance, and then you as well can do all the default stuff that you normally used to, so setters and getters defined like attributes with binding and all what you need. Or if it's a container, you just do the same, but you just use the keyword container instead of node. With that, you can use here, example, the breadcrumb bar that is from Controls-FX, or the MIG pane that is one of the best layout managers I found out there from the MIG layout. And another way is you as well can enhance. You can just say, okay, in my start, I register a new bean factory, and I give it a name, grid view, and then I give the class of the bean, so a class of the component, like the grid view in this case. And it automatically creates a factory in the background that is doing the default behavior, so getter and setter and all this stuff. And you can just use it down there, here, grid view, as all the others. So here in this moment, you just created this grid view, and you can use it everywhere. And the other thing is, you as well can create your own factory if you have more complex needs, and you just register the factory with, in this case, the message. And such a factory isn't as complicated, or not so much complicated. It is just the labeled factory. It's just a builder pattern, factory builder support pattern. And you can say, okay, this is my new instance, and here I do my stuff, and you have a lot of other options. So this is a talk for itself I could give, but beside from that, it's not so complicated to do, so you can easily enhance GroovyFX with your own stuff. And for the end, if you plan to do a application, and it's not just a small one, then I really want to point you to Griffin. Griffin is a toolkit agnostic, a framework, and as well language agnostic framework for writing desktop applications that as well has good support for JavaFX, and if you're using Groovy, using GroovyFX, and but you as well can do it with Scala, Kotlin, as well Scala, I think, and write code in Java. But it gives you much more richness, things that you normally need, and it gives you a really good startup, and it's really, really helpful. And if you have any needs, any question with Griffin as well, you can come to me or Almir as well, or go to the project site. Feel free. So thank you. Have you any questions?
Thank you. Can I run some of your scripts as single scripts, or I need a whole project to run it?
For running this?
Some of your samples?
Yes, there is.
Can run as Groovy scripts, or they need to a whole?
Yes, so the question, as I understood, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that what do I need to run GroovyFX? So can I just run it as Groovy scripts, for example, from the Groovy console or wherever? Yes, you can do, because the only dependency, let's have a look to my build project, my build file. There's much more in there because it's generating the slides as well, but hopefully we'll find it. Dependencies here. All you need is a dependency to GroovyFX. Current version is 8.0.0, and you as well can do that with a grep. So you could, you can use grep, add this dependency, and you're good for it. You can go with the start. This is for most of the things, it's good. If you just need the builder because you have some other application structure, the builder is called scene graph builder. And then it's like any other builder and can use that. Any other questions? Oh, yeah? Maybe a last question? Sorry.
In one of your examples, I saw a reference to a CSS file.
Yeah.
I was wondering up to what version is supported in JavaFX of CSS?
It's not easy to say in easy words where the limit is. But in general, you say everything that you normally use for layouting and positioning is not supported, only margins or paddings for distance and stuff like that. Yes, you can do that, but not for ordering what is right, left, stuff like that. And there is a very extensive documentation about the CSS options that you can use. I would suggest to have a real good look to the official Oracle JavaFX CSS documentation. But in general, you can say you can do all the everything that changed the look in some way. Yeah? And there are some few things that you can do in code, but not in CSS. This is, for example, having multiple effects on the same node. This is not supported by CSS. Hopefully yet, maybe they will do that later on. That is sometimes very helpful, but it's not supported currently, but could be done. Hopefully someone's doing that. Maybe myself, we'll see. But in general, everything that changes the look and not the position. Does this answer your question? Great. So then,
Thank you very much.
I thank you as well.